Thank you so much for having me, and it is a pleasure to be here on what has been a difficult day for womanhood and motherhood, and no doubt will go on to be a difficult few weeks. Um, so I was asked to talk about motherhood. I will start by saying that, like my mother, my dearly departed mother, I'm terribly slapdash and rarely prepare for such events. And when I stood up in Hackney, when I was at this event a number of years ago, when that was allowed, I just decided to speak from my heart, and I decided to do the same today. And I wanted to talk about how uplifting motherhood is. I wanted to talk about how I've tried to reject, as a feminist, the idea that motherhood could possibly in any way define me, and how I found myself incapable of actually rejecting that and being, in many ways, totally defined by it. And I will talk about that a little bit, but I think it would be remiss of me on a day like today, after the day I have had talking about dead women, to not talk about the sense of motherhood and how it can be dangerous, and how motherhood can be weaponized against women, and that is whether women have children or they don't have children, that is a fatal weapon in some circumstances. I read out a list today, as I said, and many of the women on the list will have been mothers. I mean, all of them, if not still with them, had mothers themselves. But there were a number of names on the list who I had to read out who were actually killed alongside their children. So Kelly Fitzgibbons was killed alongside her two daughters. We had Benelin Burke killed alongside her 2-year-old Jellica Burke, and Purna Kamalashwari killed along with her 3-year-old son. And I'm surprised it's not a higher number that I had to read, because the reality is, from years of working with victims of violence, is that motherhood is probably the single greatest tool and weapon that can be used against them. And I know from my own experience of being a mother that the first thing I felt overwhelming love when my first son was born, but nothing compared to the overwhelming fear that I felt. I thought I had experienced fear before, but looking at my newborn baby, for the first time, I felt a visceral, cellular level fear that each and every day I had to keep him alive. And I didn't know if I was fit to do that. And that was terrifying. And what that fear manifested in me was an ability to receive messages from society that built up guilt in me. You're not breastfeeding right. You're making a rod for your own back. You're not putting him to sleep in the right way. When my baby was your age, he was eating solids. And this tool that fear plays when a woman has a baby is very, very, very dangerous and can damage her as a mother going forward. And in the cases that I see, the fact that a woman will, before anything, prioritize the safety of her child means that she is willing to take a beating. Because what she is told is, if you speak up, they'll take the kids away. If you speak up, I'll have you deported and I'll get to keep the kids because they're British citizens. If you speak up, how do you think the kids are going to cope? For years, I have listened to mothers in refuge say to me, "Oh, he was awful to me, but he's not a bad dad." The idea that women have to keep performing, often for violent men, performing the act of motherhood, means that they can be controlled so easily And I'm afraid to say that currently the state does everything to collude with the perpetrators of that violence. So when he says, if you speak up, they'll take the kids away, when she speaks up, a social worker knocks on her door, puts her on a course, and tells her that her idea of motherhood, that she's doing something wrong, that she's not keeping her children safe from violence, and threatens to take them away. And so she stops speaking up, because I would take a beating every night if somebody said that they were going to separate me from my children. And in cases where women have no recourse to public funds, migrant women who've come to this country for a variety of reasons, what gets said to them is, well, when they step forward and they need housing, someone will say, oh, we'll take you, your kids, because the law, Section 17 of the Children's Act, says we have to take your children. But because you have no recourse to public funds, we're going to send you away. We're going to send you somewhere else. You've got to sort yourself out, but we'll house your children for tonight to keep them safe from violence. And so that woman takes her children and she goes back to violence. Motherhood for victims of domestic violence and for victims of sexual violence can be used as a tool, as a weapon, as a way to harm them. And the reason that that is the case is because motherhood is always weighted with a sense of duty on a woman, that she has to do things some magical way, one perfect way, one way for weaning, one way for dressing them, one way for making sure that they're doing their numbers in the right order. And there is always something that she can't possibly reach. There is always some goal where she can't make it. And we do this to womankind, and we put morality on the sense of their reproductive organs are owned by a state conversation that they can't even make decisions for. And we politicize motherhood at the virtue of putting women in the firing line in their homes. And so, as a feminist, I have always wanted to push away from the idea that being a mother is any different to me as being anything else, as my job or as my life choices that I make. I once described the fact that my friend Jane decided not to have children as a lifestyle decision akin to which holiday are we going to go on this year, or which sofa are we going to buy. And I truly want to believe that women should not be defined by when they have their children, if they have children, whether they raise children that they are biologically linked to, that they adopted. I want all of that not to mean anything. And yet I cannot help but feel on a cellular level that my link to my children, my relationship with them, is defined for me already. And whilst in most days I can sit and reflect on how hilarious they are, how brilliant they are, how my sons are the funniest people, literally on God's earth, say nobody can make me smile or laugh or feel pride or amused like my sons can. My eldest son said to me the other day when I put on Escape to the Chateau, I absolutely hate this program, Mum. The only good thing about it is that the title's got the word "shat" in it, and my heart literally died with pride at what a comedy joke that was. And I feel all the magic of motherhood, but that magic today has reminded me that we spend every day of our lives terrified that our children might be taken, might be murdered, might be abused. And for women, the way that we process that fear, the fear of motherhood, is to internalize it, to take that responsibility on our own shoulders and ours alone. And if something bad happens, then that's our fault. Even if the person doing the bad thing to us is clear that he's criminal, we still think it's our responsibility, not theirs, to keep these people safe. And that responsibility means accepting violence, accepting guilt, accepting gendered attitudes, accepting less pay, accepting all of those things that come with modern womanhood. And we have got to find a different way of treating mothers in society. We have got to stop beatifying the idea of saintly motherhood, because nobody can live up to it. And I could sit and talk about my mum Jean, and to me she's a saint. And I wrote a book about her recently, about the amazing political tasks that she took on as a young 24-year-old working class woman. She took on a giant of a drugs company and won. My mum was literally Erin Brockovich. And I see her in my head since she died, like she's got a golden glow around her head. And she's a biopic to me now she's gone. But in life, she pissed me off. And in life, she was pissed off with me. She wished I'd stop crying. She wished when I was a teenage girl I'd stopped talking about the things that were that week's big thing, and that she was sick of hearing it. She thought I was a knob on more than one occasion. And yet, when we think about motherhood, we think of a glow, and we put women once again into the strained category of having to live up to something that might one day be really, really, really dangerous when they cannot live up to it. And they will put their role as a mother before they put their own life. And today, on the list of women that I read out, there will be many of them who put their children before they put their own right to life. And that is something that we should all spend every minute of every day trying to stop from happening.